Welcome back, listeners, to the Lust for Life podcast, where you'll be joining a girl on her journey to discovering the depths of emotional intelligence. This is your host, Tennessee Reed. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful week. I know I had a week full of learning, lots of fun times and a couple challenging, which is good. Keeps me on my toes, keeps me learning, and keeps me growing. I mentioned in my last podcast that we are starting a book club, and I'm really, really excited about this. We have a little group going that we've messaged, but if you would still like to be a part of that group, you're more than welcome to join. Just message me on Instagram at Tennessee Reed, and we can add you to that group. Our first book is actually called The Mountain Is You, and I will put that in my bio on my Instagram under currently reading, and it's actually saved in my highlight stories. It was one of the first books that I read last year that I found really, really empowering, and so I wanted to share that with others. So that's the first book we'll be reading in the month of May. So each month we'll switch a new book. So it's going to be a lot of fun. At the end of the month, we'll all get together and we'll all do a podcast together and kind of have a book discussion. So if you're not able to join in person for those discussions, you can join virtually after and just listen to the podcast and kind of have that discussion on your own time. So you can still be involved even if you don't want to be in that discussion in real time. But it's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of encouragement and empowerment from each other, because that's how we grow. Building those connections is really, really important. So really excited about that. Once again, if you're interested, just message me on Instagram. But the topic for today is change. And that can be change in yourself, or that can be change in others. But the topic overall is change. And that was something that really stood out to me this week in multiple aspects of my life. And the ultimate subject that I want from this word change is, you cannot change yourself or anybody else unless you or who you're trying to change is willing to change. If someone is not willing to change, they're not going to change. And that's the same that goes for you. If you're not willing to change, you're not going to change. And something that I found really interesting when I first started nursing and working in the hospital, I was working in the emergency room at the time, was when we would have these people come into the ER intoxicated with alcohol, and they wanted to change and get away from their addiction. The doctor had a real conversation with them. They said, "Are you really willing to change? Because if you're not, the best medical advice that I have for you is to keep drinking until you're ready to change, because if you just cold turkey it, it can actually kill you, because your body is withdrawing so badly that you're going to have a seizure that can kill you." And I just thought that was so mind-blowing. And we would have patients all the time come in with seizures because they were trying to cold turkey, and they ended up in the ICU and because of these seizures. But I thought the discussion with the doctor, with the patient, a real deep discussion. Are you willing to change? Are you willing to be put in an institution to help you recover from this addiction of alcohol? And if they were, then the doctor would proceed and put the referral in and get them to the center that they need to be at. But if they truly were not willing to change and not willing to be put in an institution for a little bit to help them with that, the doctor literally said, then it is best that you just keep drinking the way you're drinking, because you're not going to change unless you're willing to change. And that goes for everything else in life. The first step is acceptance. I know you hear that all the time, but it's true. The first step is humility and acceptance. You have to have the humility that you need help. You have to have the humility that you need help to change. And you have to have the humility to find the help and share with others that you are having this problem. And it's hard. It's so freaking hard to watch people dig their own grave in their life and you try to tell them, you're like, hey, you should probably not do that. And they're not going to listen to you because they do not know, they're not going to accept that they need help. They cannot see that, or they're not willing to change. And you cannot change someone for them. You can kind of help them, say, hey, I'm noticing this. But even that most of the time is not helpful. They have to come to terms with themselves and realize the consequences of their own actions. And then you can give them advice when they come to you. There's somebody in my life right now that I'm like, I literally want to grab you by the ears, bring you right to my face and say, get your life together, just like Edna from Incredibles. Like, seriously, come on, you've got this. You need to just shape up. You're way more than you're doing right now. You have such a high potential. And it's so aggravating to see that what they're doing with their life. And you know what? There's probably things in my life that are the same thing. People probably look at my life a little bit and are like, oh my gosh, get yourself together, Edna mode. But truly, you cannot change anybody unless they're willing to change. And I have had a struggle the last few years that has really been hard for me. It's been hard for Jake, my husband. It's been hard for me. And that is the intimacy in our marriage. I have never been really great at the intimacy in our marriage. And that has been a real struggle from day one, but it has gotten progressively worse. And for the first few years, I was like, I got this. We're going to be fine. I'll just truck through it. And Jake would actually read books and try to tell me little passages from these books. And I just did not want to hear it. Because every time he would tell me these passages, it just brought out that insecurity of mine that I'm really not great at the intimacy in our marriage. And I just started building this aversion so badly. And Jake was trying so hard. It actually almost destroyed our marriage last year. It was a really ugly time for our marriage. But we worked it out together. We started going to therapy. And it was couples therapy. It was not sexual intimacy therapy. It was just couples therapy. And then we moved out here to North Carolina. And it obviously is still a problem. The intimacy in our marriage is not where we would like it to be. And I just denied it for so long. I just denied it. Didn't even want to read a book. I'm like, I can figure it out on my own. I do not need help. It's fine. I'll figure it out. And I did not accept, and I was not humble enough to realize that this is a real problem. This is a real problem. And I finally, on my own terms, came to the realization that this needs to be fixed. This is not fair for Jake or I, and this needs to be fixed. So I talked to my primary care physician, and that's when I got on some of the anti-anxiety meds that I talked about in my previous episodes, because I do feel like that plays a large role in the lack of intimacy that sometimes I feel in our marriage, because I'm just on such high alert all the time. I kind of needed to calm my nervous system a little bit and learn how to behaviorally calm my nervous system. And then I also got into a therapist. And it's been hard. Every week when I go to therapy, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not want to go. It's humbling. But every time I go, I'm like, okay, that was good. I'm glad I went. And then the next week, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go. Because it's hard. It's hard to admit that you have a problem. It's hard to be humble because we always want to be perfect all the time. And that's just not going to be the case for anybody. None of us are perfect. We all have our issues, and the best thing we can do is open up to other people about our issues and find the connections that we need and find the help that we need. And I have therapy today, and I've been reading books, trying to like figure out how to improve our intimacy in our marriage. And I just thought, I'm really grateful that I was able to realize that I have a problem and it needs to be fixed, and that I have a supportive husband with me. And we're going to make the best out of this opportunity, even though it's a trial and it's hard. We're going to make the best of this opportunity. We're going to grow closer because of it. So that was kind of just what I wanted to talk about this week, was being willing to look at yourself and analyze those maybe insecurities, or maybe those issues you really don't want to have to work on, but maybe we should. And maybe like ask your partner if, hey, is there anything that you would like me to work on? It's a hard question, but I think that would be like a great start if you're wondering. But it's hard. It's hard to be humble. It's hard to accept. And it's hard for me to even open up on this podcast and talk about that. And maybe I'll dive a little bit deeper into my journey with that, because I do feel like I am a bit of a unique case with this. But overall, it's hard. And I hope that you know that if you ever needed to open up to anybody, I'm always here. I'll always listen. And that's what this podcast is about. It's kind of creating this community of empowerment and helping each other, in an intimate community, a safe community. And I really, really have put my heart out into this, and I want that for everybody. I want everyone to feel safe and empowered, and I don't want anyone to feel like they have to gatekeep any of their emotions, because, you know, emotions are real, and we are all going through something, and the best way to go through something is actually to work it out with others, even though at times we just want to retract away. We just want to kind of hide away and figure it out on our own, even though that's pretty much the last thing we should probably do. It's probably Satan telling you that you can do it on your own, and you just need to hide, and you need to just not tell anybody. So I'll just leave that with you all. I love you all, and maybe this week just reflect on some things that you would like to improve, maybe little things here and there, and just overall be open-minded and humble. It's not easy, and it takes reminders, but that will be the challenge for this week. Thank you all for joining, and I'm really, really excited for next week's episode. See you then.